Embers of promise, the evening air in Varanasi hung heavy with the scent of marigolds and incense, as Prisha Malhotra wiped down the last table at Flavors of Home, her family's modest riverside restaurant. At 23, her hands already told stories, small burns from splattering oil, calluses from chopping thousands of vegetables, a determination etched into every line of her palm. "You're still here?" A familiar voice broke through her thoughts. Vikram Desai stood in the doorway, his lean frame silhouetted against the setting sun. His smile, always slightly crooked, brightened his otherwise exhausted face. Prisha noticed the crumpled papers clutched in his hand. More rejection letters, she guessed. "Just finishing up," she said, tossing the cloth into a bucket. "Another bad day?" Vikram slumped into a chair, running fingers through his disheveled hair. 3 investors walked out mid-pitch.
One actually laughed, Prisha.
Laughed right in my face. She sat across from him, pushing a plate of leftover samosas his way. Their friendship stretched back to childhood days of skinned knees and mango-stealing adventures. Now at 25, Vikram chased dreams bigger than their small town could contain. A tech platform connecting rural artisans to global markets. "They don't see it," he continued, voice hollow with disappointment. "They look at me and see some small-town nobody with delusions of grandeur." "Their loss," Prisha said firmly. "Your idea is brilliant. The right investor will come along." Vikram picked at a samosa absently. "My landlord's threatening eviction. 3 months behind now." Prisha hesitated, then reached beneath the counter for the tin box she'd kept hidden for years. Inside lay her culinary school fund, nearly 4 years of tips and extra shifts, meant to take her to the prestigious institute in Delhi she'd dreamed about since she first held a ladle. "Take it," she said, sliding the box toward him. "It's enough for your rent and maybe another prototype." Vikram's eyes widened. "Prisha, no. That's your school money. I can't." "You can and you will," she interrupted. "My application can wait another year." "Your idea can't." "I'll pay you back," he promised, voice thick with emotion. "With interest. The moment I get funding." Her mother's voice echoed from the kitchen. "Prisha, your father needs help with the accounts." "Coming, Ma," she called back, then turned to Vikram. "Take it. Just promise me one thing. Anything. When you're successful, and you will be, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget us little people." Her tone was light, but her eyes held something deeper. Vikram clasped her hands, his grip fierce with conviction. "I could never forget you, Prish. You're the only one who's ever truly believed in me." Later that night, Prisha adjusted figures in her father's ledger, trying to stretch their thin margins further. Her mother's arthritis was worsening, requiring expensive treatments. The restaurant needed repairs they couldn't afford. And now her school fund was gone. "You gave him the money, didn't you?" her father asked quietly, his weathered face illuminated by the single bulb hanging overhead. Prisha couldn't lie to him. "He needs it more than I do right now," her father sighed. "Your heart is too big, Beta. I worry it will cost you too much someday." Vikram's different. "Papa. When his business succeeds, he'll remember who stood by him." 3 weeks later, Vikram burst into the restaurant during the lunch rush, his face alight with an almost manic joy. "I got it." "Prisha, I got the funding." The entire restaurant turned to watch as he lifted her off her feet, spinning her in a circle. "Rajiv Mehta, the angel investor from Bangalore, he's giving me everything I asked for. More, even." Prisha's heart soared with genuine happiness. "I knew you could do it." That night, they celebrated on the rooftop of her family's small home, sharing a bottle of cheap wine beneath a canopy of stars. The future stretched before them, glittering with promise. "I'm leaving next week," Vikram said softly, setting up office space in Bangalore. Something tightened in Prisha's chest. "So soon?" "Mehta wants to move quickly, but I'll be back often, and once things are stable, maybe." He trailed off, looking at her with an unspoken question in his eyes. "Maybe what?" she prompted. "Maybe you could join me there, as my head of corporate catering or something. Better than culinary school, right?" Prisha smiled, hiding the small ache forming beneath her ribs. "Let's see where the road takes us first." In the quiet night, they made plans and promises, neither aware of how quickly words could dissolve in the face of ambition, or how easily distance could rewrite the closest of bonds. Golden horizons. The Bangalore skyline glittered like a jewel box against the night sky as Vikram stood on the balcony of his new apartment, 17 floors above the pulsing city. 6 months had transformed him from a struggling dreamer to the CEO of Villaged World, the fastest-growing artisan marketplace platform in South Asia. His phone buzzed, another email from a potential investor wanting to meet. He glanced at the time, 11:30 p.m. In Varanasi, Prisha would be closing the restaurant now, counting the day's meager earnings. The thought brought a pang of something like guilt, quickly suppressed. He had called her less frequently these past weeks, their conversations growing shorter, more perfunctory. There never seemed to be enough time. Vikram, are you coming back inside? Natasha Khanna, his marketing director, appeared at the balcony doorway, champagne flute in hand. Behind her, the launch party for their new app version continued in full swing. Investors, tech journalists, and influencers mingling in his spacious living room. Just needed some air, he replied, slipping his phone back into his pocket without making the call he'd been contemplating. Natasha moved closer, her expensive perfume enveloping him. Mehta is looking for you. He's bringing the SoftBank people over tomorrow, not next week. We need to prepare. The news should have thrilled him. SoftBank's interest meant potential for global expansion. Instead, Vikram felt a hollow echo beneath his ribs. I promised Prisha I'd visit this weekend. It's been 3 months since— Cancel it, Natasha interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. This is what we've been working toward. Your friend will understand, would she? The last time they spoke, Prisha's voice had carried a quiet resignation he chose to ignore. Her father's health was declining, the restaurant struggling without her mother's presence in the kitchen after her arthritis worsened. I'll send her something nice, he decided aloud. Maybe help with her father's medical bills. Natasha smiled, touching his arm. That's what success is for, right? Taking care of the people who matter. But as the weeks stretched into months and one canceled visit became many, the transfers of money felt increasingly like payments against a debt rather than gestures of care. Prisha's messages grew less frequent, her updates briefer. Vikram told himself this was natural. Their lives had taken different paths. On a rainy Tuesday, almost a year after his departure, his assistant placed a small package on his desk. From Varanasi, sir. Inside lay a jar of homemade mango pickle, the kind Prisha's mother had always made, and a handwritten note. Thought you might miss the taste of home. Papa's treatment is working, thanks to your help. The restaurant is staying afloat. I've been experimenting with fusion recipes that are bringing in new customers. Not culinary school, but still learning. Hope Bangalore is treating you well. The familiar scent of mustard oil and spices transported him instantly back to simpler days, to late nights planning his future with Prisha by his side. For a moment, the weight of all he'd left behind pressed against his chest. He picked up his phone to call her, but his calendar alert chimed. Board meeting in 5 minutes. He placed the jar in his desk drawer, promising himself he would call later. Later never came. In Varanasi, Prisha stood in the newly renovated kitchen of Flavors of Home, now rebranded as Prisha's Riverfront Fusion. The money Vikram had sent for her father's treatment had been generous, more than enough. She had invested the remainder in expanding the restaurant, adding a rooftop dining area with views of the evening arti ceremonies on the Ganges. Table 7 is asking for the chef. Rohan, her new assistant, announced with a grin. The food critic from Delhi Times. Prisha wiped her hands, nervous but prepared. Her fusion creations, traditional, Banarasi flavors with modern techniques she'd taught herself through countless YouTube videos and borrowed cookbooks, had been drawing attention beyond their small city. How do I look? She asked, smoothing down her chef's coat. Like someone who doesn't need culinary school to prove her talent, Rohan replied. The critic, a severe woman with keen eyes, nodded appreciatively as Prisha explained her philosophy of honoring tradition while embracing innovation. When the review was published the following week, calling her the undiscovered gem of North Indian cuisine, Prisha allowed herself a moment of pure, uncomplicated pride. She considered sending the article to Vikram but hesitated. Their last phone conversation months ago had felt like talking to a stranger. He had spoken rapidly about growth projections and international expansion, asking about her only as an afterthought. The money transfers continued regularly, but they felt increasingly impersonal, charity rather than friendship. That evening, as she counted the day's earnings, their best yet, her father watched her from his favorite corner seat. You should be proud, Beta, he said. You've built something wonderful here. We built it together, she corrected him. He shook his head. This vision is yours, and you did it without leaving, without forgetting who you are. The unspoken comparison to Vikram hung in the air between them. Prisha had seen the news articles online. Village to world's meteoric rise, the parties, Vikram's new lifestyle. In the photos, he looked different. Designer clothes, artfully styled hair, surrounded by Bangalore's elite. The boy who had once shared samosas at her family's small table seemed to have disappeared entirely. He's doing what he always dreamed of, she said, more to herself than to her father. And what about your dreams? Her father asked gently. Prisha looked around the restaurant, at the families enjoying their meals, the staff she had trained herself, the menu she had created through trial and error and passion. This wasn't the culinary school education she had saved for, but it was something entirely her own. My dreams changed, she realized aloud. They grew roots right here. That night she removed Vikram's contact from her favorites list. Not in anger or resentment, but in acknowledgement of a simple truth. Their paths had diverged, perhaps irrevocably. The jar of special pickle she had been saving to give him on his next visit, a visit perpetually postponed, she served instead to her regular customers the next day. Life continued its forward march. For both of them. Hollow victories. The cameras flashed incessantly as Vikram Desai stepped onto the red carpet at the National Entrepreneurship Awards. 3 years into his venture, Village to World had become the darling of India's tech ecosystem, valued at over $400 million after their Series C funding round, with operations in 7 countries. Mr. Desai, how does it feel to be nominated for Entrepreneur of the Year? Shouted a reporter. Vikram flashed his media-trained smile. It's a validation of our mission to connect rural artisans with global markets. This isn't just my success. It belongs to the thousands of craftspeople whose lives have been transformed by our platform. The words flowed easily, rehearsed with his PR team that morning. What he didn't mention was how remote those artisans felt from his daily reality of board meetings, investor pitches, and exclusive networking events. Later, at the after-party in a luxury hotel, Vikram found himself on the balcony again, a habit he'd developed whenever the noise and adulation became overwhelming. Bangalore sprawled beneath him, its lights blurring through his second glass of scotch. Hiding from your admirers? Arjun Kapoor, his CFO, joined him with a knowing smile. Just needed some air, Vikram replied, the same excuse he'd been using for years now. Well, don't disappear for long. The Reliance team wants to discuss acquisition options. Vikram nodded, though the prospect stirred little excitement. Another deal, another zero on his net worth. What difference would it make? The hollow feeling that had taken residence in his chest seemed impervious to success. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Prisha's Riverfront Fusion named in top 50 hidden gems of Indian cuisine. Curious, he opened the article. There she was, Prisha, looking confident in a chef's coat standing before a beautifully renovated restaurant. The photo showed a rooftop dining area overlooking the Ganges, elegant yet approachable, clearly thriving. The article praised her innovative approach to traditional Banarasi cuisine, mentioning that despite offers to open locations in Delhi and Mumbai, she remained committed to her hometown establishment. Some dreams are about going far, she was quoted saying. Mine was about going deep. Something twisted in Vikram's chest, pride mixed with an emotion he couldn't quite name. When was the last time he'd spoken to her? The monthly transfers to help with her father's medical expenses continued automatically from his account, but their personal communication had dwindled to occasional text messages on birthdays and festivals. Everything okay? Arjun asked, noticing his expression. Fine, Vikram said, closing the article. Just some news from home. Speaking of home, Arjun continued, the board thinks it's time you upgraded yours. That apartment doesn't reflect your status anymore. We've had the real estate team scouting properties in Indiranagar. I don't need a bigger apartment, Vikram interrupted. Arjun raised an eyebrow. It's not about need, Vikram. It's about perception. You're the face of a major tech company now. The face of a company. Was that all he had become? Vikram looked down at his custom-tailored suit, the expensive watch on his wrist, trappings of success that felt increasingly like a costume. That night, lying awake in his spacious but somehow empty apartment, Vikram scrolled through old photos on his phone. There was Prisha, laughing as they celebrated his funding news on her family's rooftop. Her eyes held such genuine joy for him, untainted by the calculation he now saw in every business relationship. On impulse, he called her number, forgetting the late hour. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Vikram, is everything all right?" "I saw the article," he said, suddenly unsure why he had called. "About the restaurant, congratulations." "Thank you," she replied, sounding more awake now. It was unexpected. An awkward silence stretched between them. "How have you been?" he finally asked. "Good. Busy. Papa's health is stable. The new treatment you helped pay for made a big difference." "I'm glad," he said, meaning it. "And the restaurant looks amazing." "It's come a long way," she agreed. "Different from what either of us imagined, but I'm proud of it." Another silence. So much to say, yet the distance between them seemed unbridgeable. "I should let you get back to sleep," he said finally. "Vikram," she hesitated. "It's good to hear your voice." After they hung up, he stood at his window looking out at the city that had given him everything he'd thought he wanted. Why did it all suddenly feel so insubstantial? In Varanasi, Prisha couldn't fall back asleep after Vikram's call. Dawn found her on the restaurant's rooftop, watching the first boats glide across the sacred river as the city awakened. Hearing his voice had stirred feelings she thought she'd put to rest. Not romantic longing, that girlish crush had faded years ago, but a wistfulness for the genuine connection they once shared. "You're up early," observed Divya, her sous chef and closest friend, joining her with 2 cups of chai. "Couldn't sleep," Prisha admitted, accepting the steaming cup. "Vikram called last night." Divya's eyebrows rose. "The famous Mr. Desai remembered your existence?" "He saw the article," Prisha explained. "He sounded different. Tired, maybe." "Success is exhausting, I'm sure," Divya remarked dryly. "Unlike our simple, relaxing 18-hour workdays." Prisha smiled. The restaurant consumed nearly all her waking hours, but the work carried purpose and joy. Every recipe she developed, every customer who returned, every staff member whose life improved through stable employment. These were tangible impacts she could see and touch. "We need to finalize the menu for the governor's visit next week," Divya reminded her. Changing the subject, the governor's visit. 5 years ago, Prisha couldn't have imagined being asked to cater for such a dignitary. Her little restaurant had become something of a cultural institution in Varanasi, preserving traditional flavors while thoughtfully evolving them. Later that day, as she experimented with a new dessert recipe, Prisha's phone chimed with a notification. Vikram had sent an extravagant gift basket, premium ingredients from around the world, with a note, "For the chef who always believed in flavor. Congratulations on your well-deserved recognition." The gesture should have been touching, but it felt oddly impersonal, as if sent to a business acquaintance rather than an old friend. The expensive ingredients, while lovely, suggested he didn't truly understand that her cooking philosophy centered on elevating local, accessible components. She shared the exotic spices and chocolates with her staff, who received them with excitement. But the note she tucked into her pocket, a reminder of how little the Vikram who sent it resembled the boy who had once shared his dreams with her over homemade samosas. That evening, a food blogger interviewing her asked, "What's the secret to your success in a city not known for culinary innovation?" Prisha considered the question carefully. "Remembering why I cook," she answered. "It's never been about acclaim or expansion. It's about creating food that honors where I come from while inviting people to imagine where we might go together. Success without meaning is just noise." As she spoke these words, Prisha realized they applied to more than just her culinary philosophy. They explained the hollow feeling she sometimes detected in Vikram's voice, in the increasingly generic gifts and messages that replaced true connection. He had achieved everything he set out to accomplish. Yet something essential seemed missing from the glossy magazine spreads and business profiles she occasionally glimpsed online. The passionate, determined young man with fire in his eyes had been replaced by a polished corporate figure whose smile never quite reached those same eyes. Prisha had chosen a different path, one of depth rather than breadth, of community rather than accolades. Looking around her bustling restaurant, at the staff who had become family and the customers who returned week after week, she felt a profound gratitude for the turns her life had taken, including the one that had separated her from Vikram. Perhaps that distance had been necessary for both of them to become who they needed to be. What she couldn't know, as the evening service began, was how quickly that distance would collapse in the months ahead. The fallen star the headline splashed across Economic Times read, "Village to World CEO Vikram Desai steps down amid fraud allegations." Beneath it, a photo of Vikram leaving the company headquarters, face partially hidden behind dark sunglasses, security guards flanking him through a crowd of reporters. In the 5 years since founding his company, Vikram had never imagined it would end like this, betrayed by his CFO Arjun and several board members who had orchestrated a complex accounting fraud scheme while positioning him as the figurehead who would take the fall. "The evidence suggests you are at minimum negligent, at worst complicit," his lawyer explained in the sterile conference room of a high-priced law firm. "They've crafted a compelling narrative that you were the architect of the financial misrepresentations. But I wasn't." Vikram protested, desperation edging his voice. "I trusted Arjun with the financial operations. I focused on product development and growth," the lawyer sighed, removing her glasses. "That's the problem, Mr. Desai. As CEO, you were responsible for oversight. Your signature is on documents you clearly didn't read carefully. Your defense of 'I didn't know' sounds like willful ignorance at best." Outside, rain lashed against the windows of the building that had once represented his triumph. Now it felt like a mausoleum for his buried ambitions. 3 weeks later, Vikram sat in his emptying apartment as movers carried away furniture. The legal settlements had drained his accounts. The luxury apartment would be sold to help cover investor claims. His reputation lay in tatters, with former allies distancing themselves publicly. Natasha, once eager to be seen at his side, had joined a competitor within days of the scandal breaking. Fair-weather friends disappeared like morning mist. Only his personal assistant Ravi had shown any loyalty, helping him manage the practical aspects of his dismantled life. "Where will you go, sir?" Ravi asked, genuine concern in his voice. Vikram stared out at the Bangalore skyline that had once symbolized his ascent. Now it felt like a mirage, beautiful but ultimately insubstantial. "Home," he said finally, the word feeling foreign on his tongue. "I'm going home." The train journey to Varanasi stretched before him like penance, each station a marker of his regression from the heights he had reached. He traveled in the general compartment now, not the executive class that had become his norm. The irony wasn't lost on him. His app had supposedly connected urban elites with rural artisans, yet he had become so removed from the reality of ordinary Indians. Fellow passengers occasionally glanced at him with vague recognition, the kind reserved for someone who might have been famous once. 5 years ago, he had left Varanasi virtually unknown. Now he returned infamous, his downfall documented in business schools as a cautionary tale of unchecked growth and inadequate oversight. As the train approached Varanasi, anxiety tightened his chest. What would he find there? His parents had moved to his sister's home in Pune years ago, their modest house sold to fund their retirement. Old friends had scattered to their own lives. And Prisha, he hadn't contacted her about his return. Their communication had dwindled to perfunctory festival greetings, his last genuine conversation with her being that late-night call after seeing her restaurant featured. What right did he have to seek her out now, when prosperity had made him a stranger? Stepping onto the platform at Varanasi Junction, Vikram felt the weight of the city's ancient rhythms envelop him. The cacophony of vendors, the press of bodies, the scent of incense and street food, sensations both familiar and foreign after years in sterile corporate environments. He checked into a modest guest house, not ready to announce his presence to anyone who might remember him. For 3 days he wandered the ghats and narrow lanes, reacquainting himself with the city that had shaped his earliest dreams. The Ganges flowed eternal, indifferent to his rise and fall. On the 4th evening, his feet carried him to a now familiar destination, Prisha's riverfront fusion. From across the street, he observed the bustling establishment with its warm lighting and rooftop seating area. A small queue waited outside, locals and tourists alike drawn by its reputation. Through the windows, he caught glimpses of efficient servers, the open kitchen where chefs worked with practiced precision. And then, moving between tables, stopping to chat with customers, Prisha. Her hair was shorter now, her movements confident as she gestured animatedly. describing a dish to delighted diners. She looked happy, fulfilled. The restaurant clearly embodied her vision, successful on her own terms rather than by metrics set by investors or market analysts. Vikram turned to leave, suddenly certain that inserting himself into her well-ordered life would be selfish. But as he stepped away, a voice called out, "Vikram! Vikram Desai?" He turned to find Divya, Prisha's sous chef whom he recognized from photos online carrying bags of fresh produce. "It is you," she said, her expression a mixture of surprise and wariness. "I thought you might show up eventually. You knew about—" He gestured vaguely, unable to finish the sentence. "The spectacular implosion of your company? Yes, it made the news even here." Her tone wasn't unkind, merely matter-of-fact. "Are you going to come in or just lurk outside like a ghost?" Before he could answer, Divya shifted her bags and nodded toward the restaurant. "She's in there. She saw the news too." The simple statement carried weight beyond its words. Prisha knew of his downfall yet had made no contact, either out of respect for his pride or because the distance between them had grown too vast to bridge. "I don't want to disrupt her evening." Vikram hedged. Divya regarded him with unexpected sympathy. "The disruption happened years ago when you left. This would just be closure, maybe, or a new beginning. Either way, better than standing out here watching." With that, she walked past him into the restaurant, leaving the decision in his hands. Taking a deep breath, Vikram crossed the street and approached the entrance. The host greeted him with a practiced smile. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?" "No, he faltered. "Is Prisha available?" "I'm an old friend." The host's expression remained professional but cooled slightly. "Ms. Malhotra is quite busy with dinner service. Perhaps you could leave your name—" "It's all right, Aditya." Prisha's voice came from behind them. "I can spare a few minutes." She stood in the doorway to the dining room, wiping her hands on a cloth. Her expression revealed nothing as she gestured toward a small office at the back. Inside the modest space, desk piled with invoices, walls decorated with framed reviews and family photos. They faced each other properly for the first time in 5 years. "You look well," he offered awkwardly. "You look tired," she replied. Not unkindly. Vikram managed a rueful smile. "It's been a difficult few months. I imagine so." She sat behind her desk, indicating he should take the chair opposite. "Why are you here, Vikram?" The directness of her question caught him off guard. The Prisha he remembered had been gentler, more accommodating. This woman before him possessed a quiet strength, a certainty about her place in the world that he suddenly envied. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "When everything fell apart, this was the only place I could think to come." Prisha studied him, her gaze neither accusatory nor pitying, simply observant. "The last time we really talked was 2 years ago? When you called about that article?" "I should have stayed in touch better," he acknowledged. "Success has a way of distorting priorities. And failure?" she asked. "What does that distort?" The question struck him like a physical blow. What had his failure revealed about him? About the choices he'd made? Before he could formulate an answer, a server knocked urgently at the door. "Chef, there's an issue with the governor's party in the private dining room." Prisha stood immediately. "I have to handle this. We're catering a special dinner upstairs." She hesitated, then added, "If you want to talk more, come back tomorrow afternoon before service begins, 3 o'clock. With that, she was gone, leaving Vikram alone with the remnants of her day-to-day life spread across the desk. Vendor invoices, staff schedules, menu plans, evidence of a life methodically built while his had spectacularly unraveled. As he left through a side door, avoiding the main dining room, Vikram realized that he had expected. What? That she would drop everything upon seeing him? That the connection they once shared would immediately rekindle? That she might even offer comfort in his darkest hour? Instead, she had given him precisely what he deserved: acknowledgement of his existence, a few minutes of her valuable time, and the opportunity to return when it better suited her schedule. Walking back to his guest house under a canopy of stars, Vikram faced a humbling truth. The world, Prisha's world, had continued turning quite efficiently without him at its center. For the first time since his fall from grace, he felt not just the sting of failure, but the deeper pain of recognizing what success had cost him long before the scandal broke. The realization left him both hollowed out and strangely liberated. like a man who, having lost everything, finally sees everything clearly. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock, he would return, not as the triumphant entrepreneur or the disgraced CEO, but simply as Vikram. The rest remained to be seen. The weight of time. Precisely at 3 o'clock, Vikram stood outside Prisha's restaurant. The afternoon lull between lunch and dinner service cast the establishment in a different light, quieter, more intimate, with staff preparing for the evening ahead. He hesitated at the entrance, suddenly aware of his borrowed courage. "She's on the roof," said Divya, appearing beside him with an armful of fresh herbs. "Go up the back stairs." Vikram nodded gratefully and made his way through the kitchen. Some staff members glanced curiously at him, others with vague recognition. The back stairwell opened to the rooftop dining area, empty now, tables not yet set for evening service. Prisha stood at the edge, gazing out at the Ganges, her back to him. The river flowed serenely below, carrying prayers and ashes and hopes toward the sea as it had for millennia. Against such ancient rhythms, 5 years seemed insignificant, yet they had transformed both their lives irrevocably. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," she said without turning, having somehow sensed his presence. "I wasn't sure I should," Vikram admitted, joining her at the railing. "Your life seems perfectly complete without me complicating it." Now she turned to look at him, her expression thoughtful. "Is that what you think? That I spent 5 years in suspended animation, waiting for your return?" "No," he said quickly. "The opposite, actually. You've built something remarkable here, completely independent of me or what happened between us." She gestured for him to sit at one of the tables. A server appeared with 2 cups of masala chai, clearly anticipated, then discreetly withdrew. "I read about what happened with your company," Prisha began, warming her hands around the cup. "The accusations, the betrayal by your partners." Vikram stared into his tea. "I was blind. So focused on growth metrics and investor presentations that I missed what was happening right under my nose. Classic founder's syndrome. Believing my vision excused me from the mundane details." "Were you guilty?" she asked bluntly. "Of the fraud, I mean." "No," he answered, meeting her eyes. "Not knowingly. But I was guilty of neglect, of trusting the wrong people, of creating a culture where appearances mattered more than substance." He paused, of forgetting what actually mattered. The admission hung between them, encompassing more than just his business failures. Prisha sipped her tea, considering him. "The Vikram I knew 5 years ago would have been devastated by this downfall." "I am devastated," he confirmed. "But not in the way you might think. Losing the company, the money, the status, that hurts my pride. But it's the realization of what I became that truly devastates me." "And what was that?" He struggled to articulate the slow transformation he'd undergone. "Someone unrecognizable. Someone who measured relationships by their utility, who saw his hometown as something to escape rather than honor, who treated his oldest friend as an obligation rather than a gift." The words came easier now, like lancing a long, festering wound. "I'm not here asking for your forgiveness, Prisha, or for your help. I just needed to see you, to remind myself of who I was before all of this, of who I might become again." Prisha was silent for a long moment, her gaze returning to the river below. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of careful consideration. "Do you know what I did with that money you sent?" she asked. The question surprised him. "For your father's treatment?" She nodded. "The first transfers, yes, but you kept sending money long after he recovered. Far more than we needed." Shame colored his cheeks. The automatic transfers had been his way of absolving guilt, requiring no actual engagement or concern. "After renovating the restaurant, I created a fund," she continued, "for local students pursuing culinary arts. I couldn't use your money to fulfill my own dream, but I could help others achieve theirs." The revelation struck him speechless. While he'd been chasing validation through acquisition offers and magazine covers, Prisha had been quietly transforming lives in tangible ways. 5 students have graduated so far, she added with quiet pride. 2 work here now. One opened a small cafe in Delhi. Another teaches at a vocational school. That's incredible. Vikram managed, genuinely moved, though I'm not surprised. You always saw potential where others didn't. A small smile touched her lips. Including in you. Especially in me, he agreed. When everyone else saw a small-town nobody with delusions of grandeur, You saw something worth believing in. I wasn't wrong, Prisha said, surprising him. Your idea was brilliant. The execution got corrupted, but the vision itself, connecting artisans to markets, preserving traditional crafts while ensuring fair compensation, that vision mattered. Her words offered an unexpected balm to his wounded spirit, acknowledgement that his fall didn't negate the value of what he'd tried to build. What will you do now? She asked. Vikram shrugged, the future a blank canvas he hadn't dared contemplate. Start over, I suppose, though I'm not sure where. Or how. Prisha studied him thoughtfully. The mango orchard on the outskirts of town. The one belonging to old Mr. Sharma, he's selling it. His children have all moved away, no one to take over. What would I do with a mango orchard? Vikram asked, confused by this apparent non sequitur. Nothing, probably, she replied with a hint of her old teasing smile. Or perhaps something. The property includes a small processing facility. Local farmers have nowhere to sell their excess fruit during peak season. Most of it rots or sells for nothing. Understanding dawned slowly. I think you should consider possibilities beyond tech startups and venture capital, she interrupted. You wanted to help artisans reach markets. Perhaps there are farmers who need the same connection. For the first time in months, a spark of genuine interest flickered in Vikram's mind. Not the frenetic energy of his startup days, but something quieter, more grounded. Farm-to-table fruit preserves? Artisanal mango products? Maybe, Prisha said. Or maybe something entirely different. The point is, failure isn't the end unless you allow it to be. Their conversation continued as afternoon shadows lengthened across the rooftop. They spoke of mutual acquaintances, of changes in their hometown, of lessons learned through success and failure. The awkwardness gradually dissolved, replaced by something not quite like their old camaraderie, but genuine nonetheless. A connection between two adults who had traveled different paths but found themselves at an unexpected intersection. As staff began preparing tables around them for dinner service, Prisha checked her watch. I need to start evening prep soon. Vikram nodded, rising to leave. Thank you. For seeing me, for not hating me. I never hated you, she said simply. I was disappointed. Hurt even, but mostly I missed my friend. The admission carried no accusation, just honest acknowledgement of what had been lost between them. I missed you too, he confessed, even when I was too caught up in my own importance to realize it. Prisha hesitated, then asked, would you like to join us for dinner service tonight? Not as a guest, we're fully booked. But we could use an extra pair of hands washing dishes. The offer startled him. Humble work in the restaurant where he had once promised to install her as a corporate executive. 5 years ago, his pride would have been wounded by the suggestion. Now he recognized it for what it was. Not charity, but opportunity. A chance to be useful, to begin again with honest labor. I'd be honored, he said, meaning it entirely. Later that night, sleeves rolled up at the industrial sink. Vikram found an unexpected peace in the rhythmic work of washing plates and glasses. Servers bustled past. Chefs called out orders. Prisha orchestrated the controlled chaos with practiced authority. He existed at the periphery of this well-oiled machine, yet felt more connected to something real than he had in years. Near midnight, as the last customers departed and staff began closing procedures, Prisha brought him a plate of food, her special fusion dessert that had been featured in culinary magazines. You worked through dinner service, she explained, setting it before him. Everyone eats here. It's a rule. The gesture, small but significant, brought a lump to his throat. Thank you. She leaned against the counter while he ate, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. The orchard, she said suddenly. If you're serious about it, you'll need a culinary partner. Someone who understands flavor profiles, preservation techniques, product development. Vikram looked up, hardly daring to hope what she might be suggesting. Do you know someone? I might, she answered carefully. Not as a full-time commitment. I have responsibilities here. But as a consultant, perhaps. A collaborator. The word hung between them, collaborator. Not quite friendship restored, not romance rekindled, but something new. A beginning rather than an ending. I'd like that, Vikram said softly. Outside, the ancient city continued its eternal rhythms, prayers echoing along the river, cycle rickshaws navigating narrow streets, the pulse of life uninterrupted by personal dramas of success and failure. Within these walls, two people who had once shared dreams, then grown apart. now contemplated a future neither had anticipated. It would not be easy. Trust once broken rebuilds slowly. The man who had abandoned their friendship for success must prove himself worthy of second chances. The woman who had flourished independently must determine if allowing him back into her life represented growth or regression. But as Vikram finished the dessert, flavors, both familiar and innovative, dancing on his tongue, he recognized that Prisha had given him something far more valuable than forgiveness. She had offered possibility, the chance to redefine success on more meaningful terms. Not all who fall are given the opportunity to rise again. Not all bridges once burned can be reconstructed. But here, in this kitchen where Prisha had built her dreams without him, Vikram found the first fragile threads of what might become his redemption. Beyond the windows, dawn approached, not the golden horizon of ambitious dreams he had once chased, but the gentler light of a new day. One to be met with humility, gratitude, and the knowledge that true success is measured not in acquisitions and accolades, but in the lives we touch and the integrity with which we rebuild after failure. The weight of time had changed them both, eroding some connections while strengthening others. What remained, what would always remain, was the choice to move forward, carrying the lessons of yesterday into the promise of tomorrow.